Attention Austin musicians and music industry professionals. Are you having a difficult time navigating these tricky waters? Well, the Austin Music Foundation is here to help you. The Austin Music Foundation is a nonprofit dedicated to strengthening and connecting the local music community with innovative programs that empower musicians, music industry professionals, and music businesses within Austin's creative economy. With expert panels, consultations, mentoring, and mixers, AMF's programs provide the necessary tools and opportunities to help the Austin music industry succeed. Now look, ever since COVID took over last year, everything's moved online. The consultations are online. They're at no cost to the artist or to the music industry professional. Just go to austinmusicfoundation.org. That's austinmusicfoundation.org to find out how they can help you. Austin Music Foundation is here to help. Let's get down.
And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here?
It's time for How Did I Get Here? And now here are your hosts,
All right, hello, I'm Johnny, I'm your host. Welcome to the show. I hope you guys all had a good weekend, whatever it is you did this weekend. It's a gorgeous weekend here in Austin. The F1 thing was here in town. Maybe you went out there and saw some cars driving fast. I think my cousin went out to that. I asked her how it went. I said, I don't understand it. She was like, I didn't understand it, but then I got into it. Now I'm like into it. So maybe if you understand it, you can get into it. I don't know. Gang, I had a really good weekend. Friday night, we had the Austin Music Foundation Artist Development Program Gen Next showcase with Poet Hawkins, Grace Sorensen, and Jake Lloyd. Everyone played amazing sets. I'd never seen Jake Lloyd. What a great, great, great set. Get out there and find these artists, man. They're really, really good, man. Grace Sorensen, Poet Hawkins, and Jake Lloyd. Maybe you saw Jake Lloyd at ACL a couple weeks ago. Fucking great band, great show, great energy. All the people there really loved it. Saturday, I just kind of hung out with Rosie and did some stuff around the house, and ended up going to dinner with a friend of mine who was taking me to dinner as a belated birthday dinner, and that was a good time. We went to this place and just had some appetizers and some cocktails, and it was a very good time. So then Sunday, I went out to the Bugle Boy in LaGrange. My friend Richard Scantz books that place out there, and he invited me out there. It's a great room. If you live in Austin, you've probably heard about it. If you're into the singer-songwriter scene, it's a great room for that. It's like a listening room. But it's out in LaGrange. It's called the Bugle Boy. It's like in some old army barracks. It's a fucking really cool room. I've heard about it for years. I've seen people post about it, and I know all kinds of people are super into it. Richard started booking it and was like, hey, let's try and do something, together with the podcast. Come out there and do the podcast. And so I did. I talked to San Antonio band Buttercup, the art rock band. Now, these guys I've known for over 25 years. I've been friends with these guys. They used to be in a band called Evergreen, and we used to do a lot of shows together, and really like epic times. We both opened for Robbie Krieger one time together. We talk about it on the podcast. It'll be out next Tuesday. It was great catching up with those guys. If you don't know Buttercup, get out there and check them out. wearebuttercup.com. Fantastic band. Check out the Bugle Boy in LaGrange. Great room, man. I cannot tell you. And they were so nice, man. So helpful, so sweet. Everyone was so happy to have me out there, and I was so happy to be out there, and they were so happy to have Buttercup. Seems like that kind of room. It seems like a very positive thing. And also, it's a nonprofit, and they do all kinds of stuff. Next Tuesday, I'll fill you in on all the great things that they do. But check it out. The Bugle Boy in LaGrange. Great place. Check out Buttercup. Great weekend. Right? What a great Sunday. Now, I'm doing this intro today on Monday morning pretty early. It's kind of raining outside. Rosie's kind of pissed off because she wanted to go outside and play. We did a little bit, but it was raining a bit too much to really stay out there. But today I'm going into the studio for Austin Music Foundation Artist Development Program with one of our artists, the Dead Coats, to the Bubble. That's going to be a really good time. And then tonight I'm playing at the Saxon Pub with Kimmy Rhodes, Kelly McWee, Gabe Rhodes, John Chipman, and a host of other people. It's going to be a great time. I'm really looking forward to doing that. And then the day that this comes out, Tuesday, I'm going to Dallas to play with Skyrocket at the Rustic. It's been a busy few days. I've been on the go, baby, doing these early morning podcast things. Whatever, man. Life is good. I'm glad to have work. I'm glad to have things to do, and I'm glad to be inspired. I really had such a good time talking to Buttercup. Like, it was really fun. I want to go out and do more podcasts out on location at places with people. So be looking for that. All right. I'm going to be going out on location doing podcasts with people. Gang, I have a great show for you today. My dear old friend Bobby Thomas is my guest on the show today. Bobby was a recording engineer back in the late 60s and 70s. He worked through the whole time into the 80s and then decided to get out of the racket because it was a little too insane and the work was a little too sketchy. So he became a lawyer. And then later on in the early 2000s, he moved to Austin and was working with a law firm and decided with my old friend Donnie Wynn to start a record label called F+M Records. And they started F+M Records and they put out a sampler with all kinds of music from people. One of my songs, Billy Harvey, Casey Crowley, I think, and a bunch of other artists. I wish I could find that sampler right now. It was really great. But then they ended up putting out my album, Boy in a Box. And I was always really flattered that someone would do something like that because Boy in a Box is a record that I just made. It wasn't supposed to be a record. They were just demos for songs that I made on my own in my room, just kind of high, recording and writing songs about my life and saying who I am. And they really connected with it and they put it out. So anyway, Bobby and me have been close friends for a long time. And anyway, let me tell you a little bit about Bobby's history. He started out playing a trumpet in like 5th grade. Started playing trumpet. His dad played trumpet. Then he ended up playing drums and then getting into playing drums and playing out in bands from the time he was 13. Then started growing up, then started getting into the studio, started engineering down there in the Baton Rouge area of Louisiana and ended up making his very first record that he ever recorded and mixed was Cabbage Alley by the Meters. I'll be playing a song from that here on the thing. The Meters. That's the first record he ever recorded and mixed. The record's fucking awesome, man. It's a total party record. If you don't know this album, get out there and check out Cabbage Alley by the Meters. Recorded and mixed by today's guest, Bobby Thomas. Then he went on to work with José Feliciano. He ended up working with this legendary A&R guy and vice president of Elektra Records named Chuck Plotkin. Ended up working on a bunch of records out in L.A. Ended up going and making records in France. These French records at the Chateau, the legendary studio where Elton John recorded. I think he recorded Goodbye Yellow Brick Road there too. Sanford Townsend Band, those guys that did Smoke from a Distant Fire, he worked with those guys as well. And then, as I said, he got out of the business. Now, I haven't seen Bobby in a few years, obviously because of the pandemic and everything, but a few years ago, he was in a bicycle accident and he hit his head. And it was a rough go of it. And then he had to have brain surgery. And now he's been recovering. He's living in a place that's helping him recover and recoup and get back on his feet and get going, health-wise and physically. But he was able to come over. He was able to sit down and talk about all this stuff. And it was really, really great getting to catch up with my dear old friend, Bobby Thomas. I hope you enjoy it. Without further ado, this is me and Bobby chatting it up. Let's get down. I was just listening to Cabbage Alley, and I've been listening to it. That record is awesome. I just had a guy here on yesterday, this guy named Micah Matenko, awesome keyboard player and musician. That's his whole, that's the number one band, is the Meters.
The Meters.
Yeah.
Yeah. I tell you what, that record was so much fun.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, it was just, they just trusted me implicitly.
Yeah.
The way it came about was kind of interesting because I had just started working at that studio and I had just finished my training. And then the studio manager says, well, how would you like to do a record? And I said, awesome, and he said, well, he said, this band, they've never worked with a white person before.
Right.
Which is
Hey, hang on 1 second. I got to make sure this AC doesn't come on and kill this story. Hold on. Sorry. I hate that. Oh, perfect. All right. Sorry, Bobby. So they had never worked with a white person.
Said they had never worked with a white person before, which is wrong. I mean, Cosimo Matassa recorded, tons of their stuff, but I guess that didn't count. But anyway, the deal that was made with them was that if they ever felt in the least bit uncomfortable,
Racially.
yeah, they could just pack up and they wouldn't be charged anything. And of course, I mean, we got along famously. I mean, there was no problem at all.
Is that the record feels super live? So what did you just set it up and like?
Yeah, it was done live.
Did you have to set up the mics as well, or did you have a guy?
No, I did it all.
Okay.
I mean, that to me is a real critical part of the whole recording process.
Especially like back then. Now recording's completely different. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
But you know what I love about it is that it's a reflection of what that room sounded like and how those guys hit their instruments.
Yeah.
And where the mics were.
Yeah.
There's no fake reverb, nothing. I mean, the record sounds cool as shit. Like everything sounds like it's supposed to sound. Like the drums sound like drums.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
So was it just basically like they'd play, and then because there was a couple instrumental jams on that song, on that record, if someone had to sing something, then they'd do an overdub and sing it, or did they was the whole thing done live? Because it really does feel like that.
It was done. I think it was pretty much all done live. I mean, the vocals. I'm trying to think of what we did with the vocals. I don't remember doing any overdubs. It's been a long time.
Yeah.
But I think everything was pretty much done live.
Was it 24 track?
No.
Tape at that point?
8 track.
Oh, really?
1-inch 8 track.
You remember how you divided everything up?
I mixed the drums, to 2 tracks as I was recording them.
Right.
So I had kick in the middle, snare in the middle, and then there are only 2 tom-toms, and I just pan them, I think, left and right. And then, so that was the drums, and then the bass I took direct. And then, I stuck a mic on the guitar. Guitar amp, and Mike the piano. We had a beautiful piano. We had a Yamaha C3 that was, somewhat old.
Nice.
And so it was a great sounding piano.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Huh. That's it.
Yep. That was it.
Those guys, how long did it take you to do the record? A week or 2?
A week.
Yeah.
It took a week to record, and then I think we mixed it in a week.
Oh.
We may not have to spend that much time mixing.
Now that record, when it first came out, didn't hit? Was that the story?
Yeah.
With it?
It was only their 4th studio record, I think.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And
and that. Sorry, go ahead.
So there weren't any hits on it, but I mean,
it's a great record to have on listening to.
Yeah.
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 So once you did that open some doors for you engineering wise?
Not really, because I was just working at the studio, and I was just, that was my only outlet for engineering. And the studio, we really, the business kind of went to shit at that point.
The studio
Yeah, we didn't have
okay.
any business, so we started doing, just sort of spec records,
Right.
And I did some records. I did some songs with John Fred, he was this crazy guy. He had a regional hit with a song called "Judy in Disguise with Glasses."
Okay.
Which sounded nothing to do
with Lucy in Sky,
right.
Lucy in the Skies. Yeah.
Right. But it just the title was that gave it a lot of
right.
That record sold pretty well.
Really?
Yeah. And Fred had a really good band, and so he and I did some spec stuff, and then that just sort of led to me really led to a lot for me, because he had some way to see Steve Cropper. So he and I drove to
To Memphis.
And met with Steve. And Steve had left Stax and started his own studio and his own label. And so, I mean, he wasn't interested in any of the stuff we'd done, but he really, he liked the way it sounded. And his engineer, Ronnie Capone, I mean, he liked it. And Ronnie was a great guy, man. He's the only recording engineer I know that's won an Academy Award.
Oh, really?
He won an Academy Award for the theme song for Shaft.
Oh, yeah.
And
he deserves it. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Yeah. So anyway, we all went up to dinner and stuff and everything, and then Fred and I drove home. And then maybe a couple of months later, I mean, the studio was really just kind of going under, and I mean, which meant I was going under,
Yeah.
And I was I had a bunch of friends who were all going to move to California, and they wanted me to go with them.
Right.
And I said, what the hell am I going to do in California?
Yeah.
And so I was kind of thinking about it, but I mean, I just put it out of my mind.
Yeah.
And then I got this call from Ronnie Capone.
Uh-huh.
And he and Steve were in Orange, California, which is just south of L.A., working with José Feliciano.
Yeah.
And Ronnie hated being in California. And they were working at José's new studio. And José and Jana had asked Ronnie and Steve to find him an engineer, and so they recommended me, just really based on the stuff that I'd played for them when Fred and I were in Memphis.
Right.
So I flew out there. I mean, I actually ended up driving out there with my friends. Got a place and then met with Jana and got the gig. So, and I mean, my gig was engineering his records and running their studio.
How was that?
It was great.
How long did you do that?
For about 2 or 3 years. It became a real family.
Yeah.
Jana, she had taken over José's management, and she wanted other people to manage, and so I recommended a friend of mine, Duke Bardwell, who was a badass singer-songwriter and a badass bass player.
Uh-huh.
And and
he was from Louisiana?
Yeah. And so he moved out there.
Yeah.
Or she moved him out there. And then he started playing on a bunch of the sessions that we did. And that was really cool. He played on a bunch of José's stuff.
Yeah.
And
how was it working with José?
Oh, wonderful.
What records did you do with him?
I did two records. Two records. One was called "For My Love, Mother Music," and
Okay.
the other one was called "And the Feeling's Good."
Okay.
So 2 albums.
Yeah.
We also did the music to an NBC TV show called Chico and the Man.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You did that song?
Uh-huh.
You recorded that song?
Yeah.
Holy shit, Chico, don't get discouraged. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. That was fun.
Yeah. So you did that at his studio as well?
Yeah.
Were they doing other people there? Were you doing other people there, or were you just basically doing José stuff?
We were Jana was looking for people to record, because she was looking for people to manage, but we didn't really do, it wasn't really open for
just people to walk in and book
people
it.
because
Yeah.
they're,
Yeah. He was really famous at that time, huh?
Huh?
He was really famous at that time.
Yeah.
And he'd already become José Feliciano. He had been on TV a bunch. And
Yeah.
so I remember seeing him back then a lot.
Yeah.
So after those 2 records with José, what'd you end up doing?
Well, they ended up getting a divorce.
Okay.
And so they sold the studio, and which that definitely put me out of work. So I moved up to the Valley. And I really had not I wanted to get to Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, and I didn't move to California to be in Orange, California. I moved to Hollywood. You know, I want
To be in Hollywood.
Yeah, be in Hollywood. you
Yeah.
know? And so I moved up there, and man, scraped and scraped for gigs and stuff. But I found work, you know, and I did a lot of. I found one studio that they just kind of adopted me, sort of. Davlin Studios. Dave Leonard. He just became a really good friend, and he told me anytime that they didn't have anybody in there, you know, I could use it, which was just crazy. And I mean, this studio was incredible. They had a Trident B series console. They had Studer machines. They had a Bosendorfer piano.
Wow.
I mean, this place was the tits. You
Yeah.
know? And a lot of rumors was done there.
Oh, nice.
And I had two microphones that I had bought, two tube type condenser microphones, Neumann M249s, which is just beautiful vocal mics.
Yeah.
And then I had two LA2A limiters, and those had not been reissued at that point. And so I ended up renting them to Fleetwood Mac, you know, for a fortune, you know, in retrospect. I mean,
How much do you remember what you paid for those Neumann mics?
I don't remember.
Okay.
God, I'd give anything if I could find them. I have them. I should have them, but I can't find them.
No.
So, but anyway, I was renting each piece to them for $35 a day. So that meant I was getting $140 a day just for the shit I was renting them.
Yeah.
Which is what kept me alive.
Yeah.
Because I didn't.
I mean, back then that was a lot of money too.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't really have any work.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's what kept me alive.
Fleetwood Mac, man.
Yeah.
Spreading that love, man. That's what happens when you're a bazillionaire.
Yeah.
Everyone bet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That's trickle down economics, man.
Really, for sure. For sure.
So, were you out like looking for bands like at night? Were you like going to like the Whiskey and the Troubadour and like looking for people that?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was going to the Troubadour a lot. I mean, I can't remember I remember seeing Steve Martin there. You know,
Performing?
yeah.
Oh, that's pretty
and-
awesome.
Yeah, and he used to wear this one of those hats with an arrow.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
he was such a trip. I mean, I loved going to see him
Yeah.
live. He was just incredible.
Yeah.
There's a story about when was it when Lennon was in town? I'll have to think of this.
Well, that was kind of like one of their haunts. That whole group of like Mickey Dolenz and
Yeah.
Alice Cooper and
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Mickey
Harry
Dolenz and they got this little group that was just going out terrorizing, you know, all the time.
Yeah, they had their own room at the Rainbow Room up at the top. Like
Yeah,
that was just for them because I guess it gets so out of hand down there.
yeah, yeah.
What was that scene like down there then? Was it already like all coked out, or what was it like? Like what was it like going into a Troubadour for a show like on a Wednesday in the 70s?
It was, you ran into all your friends in the bar.
Yeah.
You know, everybody was always at the bar or Troubadour.
Yeah.
And, but the cocaine thing had not gotten as big as it got.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
it got to
It was
the
still
point.
innocent.
Yeah. Yeah. It was still somewhat.
It wasn't addictive yet.
Right, exactly. It hadn't begun to totally fuck up people's lives.
Yeah.
yet.
I bet. Yeah, I mean, I bet that part of it, like you were there in the thick of it. Did
Yeah.
you ever know Lanice Bent?
Who?
Lanice Bent. She's an engineer. She's around that era too. Out there, I talked to her recently.
Really?
Yeah, she didn't get caught up in the drugs, but she saw people go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, she watched them fall apart.
Yeah.
So when you're working at that studio, how did you end up? Like at some point, you ended up working with that Chuck
Plotkin.
Plotkin. Yeah,
Yeah.
who was that?
Chuck was the head of A&R at Electrosylum.
Okay,
And Chuck mixed most of Bruce Springsteen's records.
okay,
He's
that
not,
must be where I know that name from.
Yeah, he's not credited,
Oh,
because Bruce was on Columbia and Chuck was the head of A&R at Elektra. So they never put his name on the records, but Chuck mixed a bunch of those records with Jimmy Iovine.
really?
There was one time Chuck called me and he wanted me to mix this Harry Chapin record. Mm-hmm. And we were working at Clover Studios, which was a studio that Chuck owned. Mm-hmm. And Chuck was at the same time mixing one of Bruce's records. And he kind of finally figured out the way that I like to work, and the way that worked best for us was he would leave me alone.
Yeah.
And I would spend about 6 hours, getting the mix pretty much together.
Yeah.
The way he described it was, he would leave me alone for 6 hours and I'd get the mix 90% there.
Right.
And then he'd come in and we'd work, 2 or 3 more hours trying to get it the rest of that 10%. And we would usually get another 5%.
Right.
You're not going to ever get perfection.
Yeah.
And so that I love working that way.
Yeah.
I mean, he Cropper was a real, he liked to be hands-on, which is okay. I really liked, treating the console as an instrument.
Yeah.
And figuring out a way to do all these moves,
Yeah.
when they needed to be made.
Yeah.
I really liked that. That was that's one of the reasons I like mixing records so much.
Yeah. It becomes its own performance. in
Exactly.
itself. Yeah.
Exactly. It is a performance.
There was I had really like some of my fondest memories of recording were working with Mike McCarthy, the engineer, on a bunch of stuff, and like when it came time to mix, and we all needed to like the whole band, like everyone had a thing they had to do,
Yeah.
and you had to do it in the time, or you'd fuck everything up for everyone. What I mean?
Yeah,
It was really
exactly.
fun.
Exactly.
It was as important as like recording live. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I always kind of eschewed that. Is that the word? Eschewed?
I don't know.
I always didn't do that, just simply because I liked, doing everything.
Right.
I liked it being an instrument,
Right.
And there was nothing I couldn't do. I mean, if I had to, I could just edit.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Real editing, cutting and splicing the actual tape. It's so funny because now, there's people that come up even since the time that we were working together, 17 years ago or something, that like now there's people that have come up that have no, like when you're explaining that to them, they're just like, why would you do that? Like, that sounds terrible, but it's so fun.
Yeah, it's a blast. And I got to be really, really good at it.
Yeah.
It became kind of in fact, one time, Chuck and I were, when we were doing that thing where he was working with Bruce,
Yeah.
and we were both working on this other record.
Yeah.
He called me and wanted to come over and have me do an edit, and it was the simplest edit possible. I mean, turned out to be the simplest edit possible, but he really had a lot of respect for my editing abilities.
Do you remember what song it was?
Huh?
Do you remember what song it was?
It was Yeah, it was Candy's Girl. And all we did was he asked me to put a different mix of Candy's Girl on the master tape.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it doesn't get any more simple than that.
That's not even like editing an actual
Exactly
middle of a song or something.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But he just, he really liked the way I did stuff. So
Yeah. Well, you did that. You did that on my record on the Boy in a Box album.
Yeah.
You made another verse. Thank God, because the song was like a minute and 15 seconds long or something.
That was a wonderful project. I really enjoyed that.
Well, that was one of the things where like I had never met anyone that was just really like heard this stuff and was like, wait, I can do this. You know what I mean? Like I never met a guy like an editor, like an actual editor.
Yeah.
I guess were there guys that did that back then?
No.
Just you. So did you, that's when you started working with the French people? Was that through Chuck or?
No, that was a guy. How did I meet him? He's a guy from New Orleans. His name was Philippe Rowe. He was actually a Parisian living in New Orleans. And he called me kind of out of the blue and asked me to come do a record at Studio on the Country in Bogalusa, which is this badass studio. Bogalusa is just a shitty little paper mill town in South Louisiana, but this guy whose father had a ton of money built a great studio. Westlake, it was a Westlake design.
Uh-huh.
It was a beautiful studio. And he asked me to come record this record, this French record, and then the guy this other guy was going to mix it. This guy in LA was going to mix it. This guy named Steve Hodge. And I said, fine, And so I went down there, and man, the band was killer. Bill Payne from Little Pete.
Oh, yes.
Jim Gordon.
Yeah.
Who's one of my two favorite drummers on the planet.
Keltner and Gordon, those are your guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And Jim Gordon and Klaus Foreman playing bass.
Wow.
And then Amos Garrett playing guitar.
Wow.
And that record was so much fun. And then I recorded it, and then, he took the tapes and Steve mixed it. And then...
Who was that artist again?
This was a group called Elite Une Fois.
Okay.
And the girl singer, Joelle, she was the toast of France at the time.
Oh, really?
She had an American father. Her father was from New York, and her mother was from Paris. And so she spoke perfect English, and she was gorgeous. And she really was the toast of Paris at the time. And that record was just loads of fun. The music was the songs were just pure pop songs, So it's not, and the band didn't get to stretch, but just working with those guys,
Yeah.
That was the thing that I always liked the best, was working with these musicians who are my heroes,
Yeah. Now, when they came in, they just kind of had the charts, and then they came up with their own parts, like on the fly, like.
Yeah.
Like, how was that, watching that go down? Because that's where the magic's going down, too.
Oh, yeah. That's the way all the sessions I did were,
Yeah.
And you just got players who, you could talk to them about it, and
Wait a minute. I think I went over something, because I have, under Chuck Plotkin in my notes, I have Elektra Records, L.A. Coke. What? What, you guys both kind of went off the rails?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ultimately, he went a little further off than I did, I think, maybe, but I did too. I mean, everybody
was he like, was that a thing? Like, what, like, was the president of Elektra, like, was he getting called into the office? Like, hey man, you got to cool out, or was everybody just doing it? Like,
oh, it was just everywhere.
Yeah.
It was just everywhere. I really regret getting all hung up in that,
Yeah. There's the stories are always kind of funny from the early time of it, but they never end, like, everyone in my crew was all partying in like 2005 or whatever. And then remember, Brad's girlfriend Amanda died in like a motorcycle accident, like going to
Right.
get blow with some weird dude. And then you're like, what are we doing? What's
Yeah.
everyone doing?
Right.
Guys, that's like the thing.
Yeah.
There's always like an event that like takes everyone out of the game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I tell you, I just I'm glad as hell I got out of that.
Yeah. So that's when you went off to France, and it was like a different scene.
Yeah.
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 So then after you made that record with all those all-stars and the beautiful American French lady, then you went to France, like they brought you out there to do other records?
Yeah, that's when I started getting calls to go to France, and I loved that because I didn't I didn't approach it very sensibly. You know, a sensible person would have, made my plans to go to France, and then immediately come back home and start beating the bushes for work.
Work, yeah.
Which was always hardest thing in the world for me, was to get work.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
But I would always buy a Euro pass. And I mean, fuck, I'm in Europe,
Yeah.
why not? So when I'd finish something over there, I would just hop on a train, and go exploring.
Well, it's also like if you were like there, for people that might be listening that are like, well, why didn't you just email somebody and tell them? Like back then, like calling someone from another country was like a thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like
It was a lot of
there was a
money.
delay.
Yeah.
It was a lot of money.
Yeah.
You couldn't get information right away. No one could ping you back on anything. No one could text you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's no WhatsApp.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, but you ended up working on more stuff there, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I ended up spending a while there because I fell into a thing. I was working at the Chateau,
Yeah.
which is absolutely my favorite studio in the world, and it's not fancy.
Right.
And it doesn't have a Neve console, it has an MCI.
Yeah.
Doesn't have a Studer machine, has an MCI. And that stuff has always been considered like a little bit lower grade, but I mean, stuff works.
Yeah.
Works fine.
Yeah.
And when I was working with Chuck on this what's his name record, when I was mixing that record with him,
Springsteen? No. That's all right.
Yeah. Anyway, the monitors in his studio he didn't like at all. It's a JBL system.
Yeah.
Like two 15-inch woofers and a horn.
Yeah.
And what he was used to working at Sound Factory, and Sound Factory had a 604 system, which is an Altec 604E, that you modify by cutting out the cells in the horn. And then Mastering Lab made their own crossover. And the 604E was what's called a dual concentric speaker. The horn went through the magnet, the
Okay.
woofer magnet,
Okay.
and so then there was a horn lens, inside the woofer.
Okay. That's weird.
So tannoys are like that.
Okay.
And they're really good because there's no phasing between the mid-range and the woofer.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's good for point source localization, meaning, you can point to something, in the mix, in the
Right.
panorama.
Right.
And
It gives it some depth.
yes,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
And in LA at that time, there were studios either had a JBL system or they had a system based on Altec 604Es.
Right.
And someone came up with a system with an Altec 604E and then a kind of like a Audio Techniques or something, 15-inch woofer, a not very good woofer, additional woofer just to add a little bit, and then the Mastering Lab crossover. And that's what everybody had, that or our JBL system.
Yeah.
And Chuck was used to working on those systems, so he didn't want to mix this record. Harry Chapin, that was what we're working on.
Oh, right.
He didn't want to mix this record using his monitors, so he got on the phone, and Val Garay, who was an engineer who worked at Sound Factory, who did tons of records you've heard. He did a lot of Linda Ronstadt, Jackson Browne.
Right.
He was that. He did
Sound Factory. That's the Sunset Sound Factory.
No, it was just Sound Factory.
Okay,
There's Sunset Sound and then Sound Factory.
Okay.
2 different studios. But Sound Factory did a whole lot of that. They did a whole lot of that Linda Ronstadt, that genre of people. And Val had this set of monitors that he had put together because he wanted to have some 604 bass system. So he bought 2 of the utility boxes, which is just the Altec enclosure that it's just a, it's a box like that, and like that, and like that, and the speaker fits in there, and, and then he had flight cases for them. And so we rented them from him. And so as soon as we finished doing that record, I set about finding myself a pair of 604Es and mastering lamb crossovers, which I did, and then I had flight cases built for them, and so that's what I did. I had a cartridge service, and I had
Everybody does out there.
Yeah. So
Everybody did. I don't know if they do anymore.
Yeah.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So I just had my cartridge service bring it to wherever studio I was going to be, bring them to wherever studio I was going to be working, which was cool because that's the real unknown in studios, or how accurate are the monitors? Am I putting on tape what I think I'm putting on tape?
It's funny that you say that because I work on the same monitors from the very first studio I ever went in. There's still NS10s. I'm still using. I don't know. I really hate those powered new monitors. I don't. Yeah. They sound weird to me. I know these are harsh, but I know what I'm hearing.
They are the standard of the industry.
And
they really are.
I don't think they are anymore.
The NS10s?
I don't think so. You think so? I don't know. I mean, everywhere I go, they're there, but I go to old people's studios.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I love these. I pulled these things out of storage recently. I haven't taken them out of the anvil cases, but
didn't you? I remember going out to your house one time and you had these giant speakers. Is that the ones you're talking about? Yeah. Those are always the ones that they had in the studio that you listen to at the end of the day. Like you don't listen to those during the day. You know what I mean? You're doing the regular NS10s and Oratones, but you're not hooking up to those giant guys in the wall.
I was always a giant guy, right?
Yeah?
The NS10s, they weren't really popular at all when I was working in the Oratones,
No, I think the NS, I started going into studios in 1984, 85. I think that's when they kind of started becoming the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe. So, did you ever, you worked loud? Did you ever ear fatigue as an engineer? Is that a real thing that happens to you? It happens to me because I would get louder and louder and louder.
Yeah. I used to listen loud. Everybody did.
Yeah.
God, Phil Spector, Jesus Christ.
He listened loud?
Oh, Lord, yeah. Yeah.
But listening quiet is really the litmus test. If you can put it on one Aratone speaker and turn it down real low and hear everything, you're in good shape.
Yeah,
exactly. Is that what you did?
Exactly.
And then you ran cassettes out to the car and listened in the car?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, did a lot of that. Did a lot of that.
Yeah. So when you left, why'd you leave France? You just kind of ran out of work and wanted to come back to America, or?
Yeah, I was going back and forth.
Okay.
I really just kind of ran out of work in France. Yeah. I kind of ran out of work in France, and my work in L.A., kind of improved.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
And you worked with Sanford Townsend?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did all the demos to get them their deal. Because we'd just been friends for a long time, and then they worked with John Haney did their first record, and
Is that the Smoke from a Distant Fire record?
yeah, actually Jerry Wexler produced that, and that
Oh, really?
and that was recorded at Muscle Shoals.
Oh, that's a really good sounding song.
Yeah,
Horns sound great on that song.
yeah,
Great groove.
yeah.
Huh. The great Jerry Wexler. So what else were you doing in L.A. there?
God, looking for work.
Yeah.
Looking for work and hanging out in, the Troubadour and the other clubs. But
Yeah.
a lot of looking for work.
What year did you, had you gone to law school already? Or,
No, I had been accepted to law school,
okay.
but I just never went.
So the work just kind of dried up. You decided to go to law school?
I remember I was working on the Sanford Townsend
Sanford Townsend? Yeah.
Sanford Townsend Band record that I did, which was their final record, I think.
Uh-huh.
And I remember I was in the control room, and I remember thinking, I'm really tired of this hand-to-mouth living,
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I was thinking about, it'd be nice to have a family at some point,
Yeah.
but you just can't do that when you're living, as hand-to-mouth.
It doesn't seem like as an engineer, if you're going to be really successful, like anything outside of being an engineer is just going to get in the way of being an engineer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Producer as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that was really the, and I just decided, all right, well, I'll go to law school. So I called LSU and said, hey, I'm going to come. So they said, sure. So I moved down there.
That's awesome. What year was that?
Good Lord, I don't know. I'm terrible at pinning
Like-
years and stuff.
Late 80s, early 80s?
Yeah, early 80s.
Yeah.
Again.
So later on, when you were as what I was getting to with the law stuff is obviously you took a left turn. I just had this guy. It came out today. This guy Ed Cariff. You know the photo of Jimi Hendrix at Monterey where the guitar's on fire and he's on his knees and he's doing the thing. He took that photo, but then he went on to do like 200 album covers, and then like at one point in the early 80s, same thing. He was like, I'm gonna be a chef. Bye. And he just took off and became a chef.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, and that's he wanted to do that instead. To me, that's like a great, it's better than sticking around after you lose your passion for it.
Yeah.
No one wants a guy that hates what he's doing, and especially in the art, making creative shit with other people, and it's a lot of responsibility as an engineer. Someone's spending money, and you got to make what's in their head sound like what they want it to sound like coming out of those giant speakers, or better. You know, it's a lot of responsibility. I don't think people look at it that way.
I still loved engineering.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd do it again, in a heartbeat.
It was the inconsistency. It is hard. Feast or famine sucks.
It was just feast or famine, and I just got tired of that.
Yeah.
And so I'd been accepted to law school, so I thought, well, try this.
Yeah. But then in your journey later on, didn't you worked with Rupert and Eve, because Rupert moved out here like to Wimberley?
Yeah,
Didn't
Rupert and his wife Evelyn moved to Wimberley.
Right.
And so I represented him in a couple of things, and he and I got to be really good friends.
That must have been also like on another level, like the fact that you were fetishizing his work when you were younger, to get to like become friends with that guy must have been so awesome.
Oh, it was
magical.
completely awesome.
Yeah.
He and I would talk audio so much, and I go down in there, and I would never, I was always careful that I wouldn't bill for any audio talk,
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah.
I was always scrupulous about that, but I go down there and spend a lot more time because we just talk about audio, and I learned a ton from him. It was just so much fun talking with him.
Yeah.
I never thought, who'd have thought I'd be talking audio with Rupert Neve?
Yeah. And a totally different sort of thing. Like he wasn't at your studio fixing your board. That's how you met. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So through that, I remember one time you brought me a preamp to try out that he had that was really good.
Yeah.
It's magical stuff. It was all done by hand, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you get some stuff while you were in your?
I did. I mean, I don't have anything left, but
Yeah.
I did. I got yeah, that was his Portico line, which is what first thing he came out with after. I don't remember what was the dividing thing in his business life, but he got a chance to start this new line, and so he did.
It would probably be because people stopped using boards.
Yeah,
I mean, you got to go make something else.
yeah. That seems to be changing.
You think people are coming back with boards?
Seems to be. I would love to get back in the studio with I love consoles.
Yeah.
I mean, I love just being able to reach up and do stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
On a laptop, it just doesn't seem like you're doing that. It seems like you're writing code or something.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel as fun.
No,
It really doesn't.
No.
All the gadgets, all the outboard gear.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because we talked about these drums, and I want to talk about specifically about drums, like the drums on Cabbage Alley, just as an example, because I'm going to play a song from there on here,
All right.
if you don't mind.
No, that'd
but
be great.
I've dug that record so much, and if people don't know it, they should definitely know it, because if you're into the meters, it's a
Yeah.
killer record. So here you have these real, like the room. What you're hearing is the guys touch the drums and the room that they're in,
Yeah.
and you're hearing as much of the room. For those of you listening, you hear as much of the room as far as the mic is away from the drum.
Yeah.
It allows the sound of the drum in the room to come in, as opposed to just the drum and the microphone.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. So then in the 80s, digital equipment came out. People discovered this fucking shotgun sound with the gated reverb thing with the and snare drum sounds. Like the thing was to be consistent, so there wasn't any like feel anymore. It was like doom crack doom crack doom
Yeah.
crack doom crack,
Yeah.
like just this insane fucking thing where people would even sample a drum just in case a guy's like touch was a little off.
Yeah.
But that's what humanizes music. So when that turn happened, how did you like, were you like, what the hell's going on with music? What happened?
I think that's after I had already backed away, because that was one of the things. I mean, there was, the reasons that I backed away to go to law school had a lot more to do with boy bands and just the weird, shitty change that music business had made than anything else,
Yeah.
I mean, it just it got to a point. I mean, I didn't want to make those kind of records.
Right. No, there was there's someone I had to talk. Oh, Nancy Wilson from Heart.
Yeah.
I had spoken to, because they had two distinctly different careers, like a 70s career, which was real cool, and then all of a sudden other people were writing their songs. They got their boobs done.
Yeah.
Had like crazy hair and all this. Like it became like this whole other business.
Yeah.
Yeah. Almost the business of hits, as opposed to like the business of art anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when Warner Brothers dropped Sanford Townsend Band, I mean, which was right, and I mean they let them know when we were doing that last album that they were moving to disco and boy bands, and I mean when Elektra Records had a disco department, I mean that's when I knew things were just had gone to shit.
Yeah.
And the disco department, they had their own office, which was in the halls,
Right.
because they didn't have room for them. But I mean, that was when I knew things had just, that the biz had just gotten a little bit over the top for me.
Yeah. I mean, I'll say like some of those records, like those early records and like, you know, all of those great orchestral arrangements and string arrangements. And sometimes they were
Yeah.
really good songs.
Yeah.
But then when it just became the beat and some kind of repetitive thing that you didn't have to really think about anymore, you know.
Well, I worked with this guy, Chris Walsh, who was he was my second engineer when I was working out at Electris Island, and his wife, Rita Jean Bodine, was isn't that a great name? She was a great singer and a great performer, but he had been beating on the president of I can't remember who a record company was, 20th Century, I think. He had been beating on the president of 20th Century to let him produce a record on her, and so finally he said let me and Bobby produce a record on her, and finally the guy said, okay, I'll let you produce a single, and we went yes.
Yeah.
And he says, but it has to be a disco version of Glenn Campbell's "Gentle on My Mind."
Jesus.
Yeah.
So did you do it?
We did it, but boy, it was weird, you know. But we used all the guys. We used all the disco guys. We got Gene Page to the string parts, you know. We had the guy who played drums and all the disco stuff. I mean, we went to Davenport and just used all the disco players, you know, to do it. And then and it was what you would expect.
God, that's really funny, man. Do you listen? How do you listen to music now? How do you listen to music now? What's your how do you do it?
I have this. If I would give anything to have my system, you know, but I live in a room,
Right,
know.
right.
But I have I have this JBL Bluetooth speaker.
Those are good.
Yeah. And I just crank the shit out of that.
I bet, man.
Yeah.
And you listen through, but do you listen to like Spotify or Apple Music, or do you still like seek out new music? Or do you? Because I remember you always kind of like being like, "Oh, have you heard these guys?" kind of guy.
Yeah, what I normally do is I'll play something that's on my phone, and when it ends, it just starts playing stuff.
Right.
You know, and so.
Are you listening to new stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything that you like?
I don't know what most of it is.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that's another thing, is it just happens kind of fast.
Yeah.
It's funny, I realized that like ever since I got on like Spotify and stuff like that, that I get so ADD that like I almost don't even finish a song before I have to go find the next song that I'm going to listen to.
Yeah.
And then like last year I was like, I really need to listen to an album from start to finish every day. So
yeah,
while I'd make and eat dinner, I would listen to one album, just kind of like randomly pick one. And then people I talked about on the podcast, people started sending me ideas. Because then eventually you're like listening to Tapestry, Dark Side of the Moon. You're just listening to like ones you're going to listen to anyway. And then you're like, wait, I should listen to someone's whole album that I've never heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Tapestry, God, that record.
Still great, man.
I can't believe how many times I played that record.
Yeah. It's funny. I was listening to it. When did I listen to it? I guess I was at my grandma's house, and my aunt was playing it. And I came in, and I don't mean this in a bad way, but then I understood like, oh, that's why people were like, hey, you're not an artist, because I heard her singing like from the other room, and I was like, she hits all the notes and stuff, but she's just not a great singer at all.
Yeah.
But she's great with her songs. She's just not like, you're like, oh, that's why people were like, you have great ideas, but you don't need to be singing them.
But I tell you what, I listened to that record, a million times.
Yeah.
I really did.
Yeah.
I get that way with records.
Yeah.
know.
What was the last one you did? Do you know? You remember the last album that like hit you like that?
the record that changed my life. I mean, there's my very favorite record ever is a record by a group called Delaney and Bonnie and Friends.
Yeah.
And they're I don't know where it comes in their chronology, but the name of this record is Accept No Substitute. And God, man, the players, Jim Keltner, Carl Radle, bass player. Bobby Whitlock plays on it.
I just had Doug Clifford.
Oh, really?
Yeah, on the show. It comes out next week, but he's put out a record that he and Bobby did that they recorded back in like 79 or something. I didn't realize what a singer, like Bobby's a hell of a singer, not just a great organ player and stuff. He's a great singer.
I'm just discovering that.
Yeah.
I'm just discovering that.
Kind of blew my mind.
Well, Doug Clifford, we opened for Creedence when they played in Baton Rouge.
Oh, yeah?
And when they got to town, Leigh Keller, who's the promoter's girlfriend, she picked him up at the airport, and then she took him over to their hotel. And when they walked in, they looked at him at the hotel. They said, "Are you guys musicians?" And they said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, you can't stay here." And they said, "What?" They said, "You can't stay here. We're not letting musicians stay here." And it turns out that Steppenwolf.
I was going to see what band it was.
Steppenwolf had been there the week before and had trashed the place, right?
Yeah.
And so there was no other hotel.
Yeah.
In Baton Rouge, there was this very large Holiday Inn,
Right.
But I mean that wouldn't work. So Leigh said, "Well, look, I got it. You guys can go stay with my buddies. They have a farm out on the Bayou Teche." And I mean, this was the time when they were singing "Born on the Bayou."
Yeah.
And we were literally right on the bayou.
Yeah.
And they, I mean, at first they were going, "What?" And she said, "Look, believe me, it'll be fine." So they tried to call us, but we were having this storm, so the phones were out, so we didn't have any idea this was happening.
So Creedence shows up at your house.
Yeah, they showed up at our house. and when they pulled up, we all went out, and when John Fogerty got out of the car, I mean, he was just sort of mortified,
Yeah.
I mean, here we are just showing up at these people's house unannounced, to say, "Hey, can we stay with you? They're our opening act. Can we stay with you?" And but it was a blast.
Yeah.
John was not the friendliest person.
I get that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the rest of us, I mean, I had like a gram of hash.
Oh, yeah.
So we had something to keep us
Entertained.
And we just our instruments, I think, were probably always set up in the living room. So we just hung out and jammed, and I think Clifford made dinner, made some spaghetti. And, it was a trip, man.
He's a cool guy. Man, that record that he did after they broke up, the Cosmo record, he sent me, I mean, it's on Spotify, so he sent me a vinyl copy of it. That record's awesome, man. It's awesome.
I've never heard it.
It's great. It's him singing, playing drums, great band. It reminds me a lot of the vibe of that Meters record, and just kind of like it seemed like he was going through some kind of like Little Feat, like,
Yeah.
When did Little Feat come out? Was it early 70s or mid 70s?
It was kind of mid 70s. I
Okay.
used to go see them at the Roxy.
Maybe it wasn't them that. Maybe it was. I don't know. But there is that feel.
God, I love Little Feat.
Yeah. What a great band.
Yeah. I used to go see them at the Roxy.
Yeah.
What a trip that was.
Yeah. Did you ever see them? I saw them after Lowell George's passed, and they put out records in the late 80s and early 90s. I saw them after that first record once. It was really good.
Yeah.
I think they had to get two guys, though, to cover for Lowell.
Yeah.
One guy to play and one guy to sing. something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When Lowell was still alive when I saw him.
Oh,
I
yeah.
saw him a few times.
Yeah.
It was great seeing them. They just, God, they were so funky.
Did you ever see Bonnie Raitt around
Yeah.
then? Yeah. Because
Yeah.
there was a cool LA scene going on then in the
Yes.
70s, like with
Yes.
real cool bands, and kind of after Linda Ronstadt and the Eagles made
Yeah.
it, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a good time around then. Were you around then during the time when those guys were playing the Troubadour, the Linda Ronstadt, or did you get there a little bit after that?
No, I was there.
You were there?
Yeah. The Troubadour, that was one of my favorite hangs.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah.
Man,
I like that place.
I went to I went to the Troubadour for Thanksgiving. I mean, for Halloween
Oh, you did?
one time. Yeah, and God, that was fun.
Yeah.
All of the people I was with. I mean, we all just got totally into our characters. You know? I mean, it wasn't costumes; it was characters.
Yeah, yeah. I love that place. I went there a whole bunch, and like I knew all of the sort of mystique about it going there and hanging out.
Yeah.
But it wasn't as mystique-y in the late 90s. But
Yep.
then we ended up playing there in 2000, and I almost remember every bit of it. Like I remember almost every second of playing there. I remember being upstairs and looking down at that stage and just thinking like that's where that stage, like Elton John walked on that stage one night, and a couple nights later he was Elton John.
Yeah. Exactly.
He was a dude before then that had a record deal that they were trying to like make break in America.
Right.
And like you just look at that, you're like, shit, that's where like these people
Yeah.
became themselves. Even people like Motley Crue and shit like that. Like
Yeah.
people later on, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But the ones that I really like, Jackson Brown and like, all
God,
those
I
guys.
used to love Jackson Brown.
Yeah, me too.
I've got tons of his records.
Yeah. Yeah, he's great, man. So wait a minute. So you never told me, are you listening to Spotify or Apple Music, or what?
I guess Apple Music.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to nail that down, you know.
Yeah.
I've got so much stuff on my phone,
Right.
and that's kind of my go-to first.
What's on your phone?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I still listen to that Delaney and Bonnie album.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, it just mortifies me.
Yeah. It's great stuff.
Yeah.
But it's cool that you can, like now at this point, like when we met, you couldn't say like, oh, I did this Cabbage Alley album. It would take me a month to find out where it is. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
And now, like, I look it up, I listen to it, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
Go and
Right.
listen to stuff like that. Anything else you want to talk about? It's great seeing you, man.
Yeah, it's great
Yeah.
seeing you too.
Yeah.
Been way too long.
Yeah. You feeling all right?
I feel great,
Yeah.
except I've been cooped up, you know.
Yeah. So where is this place? Like, do you get to do, I mean, you got to come here. I mean, do they not, not that that's like a great thing, but you're just like cooped up there?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the people there are kind of, physically fucked up one way or the other.
Right.
A lot of people in wheelchairs.
Yeah.
A lot of people just in beds.
Sorry, man, 'cause it's hard to keep your spirits up at in that situation.
Yeah.
Not a lot of high spirits going on. You've always been like ready to go do something guy.
Yeah.
Inspiring guy to be around. Yeah.
I'm really, really, I've been trying to find a place to live,
Yeah.
and I just haven't. But I will.
Yeah. Well, hopefully, you should move here. It's my favorite place. And it's still affordable, which is weird.
I've been trying to get in this place,
Yeah.
but they don't never have any vacancies.
I'll let you know as soon as I hear one. I'll ask them to tell me.
Boy, that would be wonderful.
Yeah.
Or just if it,
It'd be great to have you as a neighbor. We could listen to music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, I've got my my record collection is still over at Sarah's house.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's giant.
Yeah.
I have a lot of records.
Yeah.
And a really good turntable.
Nice.
And I have those giant speakers
Yeah.
although they don't have to be in any place. I mean, I have also bought a little pair of small tannoys.
Oh yeah, good.
But I love those big Altec speakers.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes I put CDs on and listen to them on that thing. I also have a regular stereo, and like I still have my iPod.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
That's it was like the 8-track of my generation.
Right.
Not,
yeah.
not even. I guess the 8-track was the 8-track of my generation. The 8-track of my little cousin's generation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, dude, it's been great talking to you.
I've really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, man. A good walk down memory lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone get out there and check out some of these records. What were actually, I don't have a pen. I'll write them down. But what were, once again, the José Feliciano records?
One of them was called And the Feeling's Good. Mm-hmm. And one of them was called Mother Music.
Mother Music.
It's actually For My Love, Mother Music.
Okay.
And that one's got we did some interesting things.
Yeah.
There's this keyboard player named Larry Mahobarak, who at that time was Elvis's keyboard player.
Oh, that's cool.
And we did a thing where he wrote a string chart for one of Jose's songs, mm-hmm. and then he told Steve, at some point, he said, "Listen, I met this guy Clark Spangler, and he's got a bunch of synthesizers, and he says he thinks we could do this whole thing on synthesizer." And nobody did that before that I'd ever heard.
Yeah.
And so Steve asked me, "Could we do it?" And I said, "Sure." There was no way to sync machines then.
Right.
But if you were clever, you could get two machines to run at pretty much the same speed.
Yeah.
You had to build, a vari speed.
Yeah.
Because they didn't even have any vari speeds then, but you had to put one together. And then so I told him, sure, so we had the track recorded. And then, I recorded, like a mono mix of that, and we put that on one track of another piece of 2-inch tape. And then we did all these wonderful synthesizer things.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah.
On the other thing. And then I got RCA to bring me down another 16-track machine. And we mixed from two 16 tracks.
Wow.
It was a blast.
That's awesome, man.
And it came out really, really good, too.
Yeah. Somewhere there's some kid listening to that and going like, well, they only made 32 tracks. I can get 186 on my Pro Tools.
Right, exactly.
But it's still exciting, man. It's exciting to do that shit.
Yeah, it is, the challenge, I think it adds something to the result,
There's something about limitations that push your creativity to work around those limitations.
Exactly.
Yeah. And having unlimited stuff, sometimes I've been in those situations. You don't even know what to do, and then you're just doing stuff because you can.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. Well, dude, it's been great talking to you and catching up. I love you, man.
I love you too, man.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed this.
Good. That was my dear old friend Bobby Thomas and the Meters from their album Cabbage Alley. What a great conversation, man. I love that dude. I want to thank Bobby for coming over here and taking the time to do it. I've always been appreciative of his support of my music, and I've always enjoyed our friendship. I love him a lot. So yeah, thank you, Bobby, for coming and doing the show. I hope you enjoyed that show, man. Bobby's a great dude. Get out there and check out some of the records that he worked on, he talked about during the show. And definitely check out Cabbage Alley, man. That record that record just gets me in the mood to party. I love it. Yeah, hey, and don't forget when you're out there checking out all that stuff, you can subscribe to this podcast wherever it is that you find podcasts, be it Apple Podcasts, Spotify, TuneIn, Overcast, Stitcher. New shows every Tuesday, every Friday. I've been dropping some From the Vault episodes, just dropped Red Volkart on Saturday night at midnight. Get out there and check that out, man. That's a great conversation with a very legendary guitar player who played with Merle Haggard, Dolly Parton, all kinds of deep people. Get out there and check out the Red Bull Card episode. All right, I want to thank my friend Bobby Thomas for doing the show. It was great talking to him. Great catching up. Have a great week, whatever it is you're doing. Let's get down.